Hello, folks. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed today's film. We welcome today writer director of today's film, Chuskit, which is set in the beautiful Ladakh, India. Today's film, I think, gave us a lot to think about. And so here we are in conversation with Priya Ramasubban to learn about the story behind the story of tonight's film. And to interview her is Adhrucia Apana from Hollywood. So I just want to say and tell you a little bit about Priya and Adhrucia and a little bit about myself. I'm Rati Apana, as many of you know. I'm the executive director of the Indian Film Festival of Cincinnati. And with me is the delightful director of today's film called Chuskit. Her name is Priya Ramasubban. She has over a decade of experience directing, producing, writing, and developing programs for the National Geographic Channel and several other media outlets such as the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, and the PBS. Um, Priya is a storyteller at heart, and she brings a rare combination of passion, of creativity, and she deals with a very complex subject. And she's done that before in all the productions that she's done. And she brings, compassion, she brings passion, she brings creativity, and she allows for a lot of layered interpretation in her work. She has done films shot in 29 different countries across the globe, from Argentina to Zimbabwe, I hear. Her work now in all of these countries really has contributed to her becoming a better director. It's allowed her to really think about her audiences and to deliver the message to a diverse audience. Um, Priya, welcome. Welcome. You're so welcome to be here with us today. I just want to tell the audience a little bit about your written work and your direction. So I'm just going to read out a few things. She has written and directed The Lost Kings of Israel for the National Geographic, Divine Delinquents for the National Geographic. She's done several episodes on the long running series Digging for the Truth on the History Channel, and she's done some work on the Discovery Channel as well. And it's episodes on the series Into the Unknown, and some of you might have watched that. She's done an episode on monster fish for National Geographic and several other notable productions. Priya was also one of 6 people chosen from all over India as part of a screenwriters lab organized by the National Film Development Corporation, where she then got the opportunity to really flush out and evolve her story for Chuskit under the mentorship of an award winning Dutch writer called Jolene Lauman. And besides all of this that she does, and we'd love to learn more about Chuskit, which I believe is written, really is a true story brought to life by Priya. She's also an activist, and she does a lot of work towards sustainable rejuvenation of lakes in Bangalore, India. And I think for those of us who are from Bangalore, we know what that means. It's a lot of work, and thank you for doing that, Priya. Welcome here. And interviewing you tonight, Priya, is Adhrucia Apana. Adhrucia is an executive producer, a producer, and a co-founder of Curiosity Entertainment. This year, her films include Capone, starring Tom Hardy and Matt Dillon. Then she's done Harry Half, starring Ben Foster and directed by Barry Levinson, and Needle, starring Cynthia Erivo, Leslie Odom Jr., Orlando Bloom, and Frida Pinto, directed by John Ridley. Welcome, Adhrucia. I'm so glad that you're here with us today at the Indian Film Festival. And I'm so glad that you have a chance to meet with Priya as well. So,
Priya, it's such a pleasure to meet you. I very much enjoyed Chuskit. It's inspired by the real life story of Sonam Spalzes. Did I say it right?
Spalzes.
Spalzes, a girl in Karnataka with cerebral palsy. Chuskit has been going very strong at all the festival circuits. It premiered at Gifoni Film Festival in Italy, where it won the Special Amnesty International Award, and it won the gold for Best Feature, which is targeted for kids 5 to 9. And at the 20th Geo Mumbai Academy of that's where it won at the Mumbai Academy, right? It won the Best Feature.
That's right.
And again at the Dharamshala International Film Festival. You also won one of the Best Received Pictures awards, and then the New York Indian Film Festival, you won another award, correct?
Yes, I mean it's been around a little bit. Yes,
I've been around a little bit. It's been winning a little bit. It's a beautiful story, and it's really about, more than anything, the complexities between family members and the sacrifices that we make. And I found that those moments between these characters were very raw, where they have to make some very real and very real decisions to sacrifice what might be their own benefit for the benefit of others. Tell us, first of all, it takes place in Ladakh, right?
in Ladakh, yes.
Ladakh, I'm saying it right? Okay. In Ladakh, which is a very it's not a very populated area. What was your choice to do a story in Ladakh? Was it because you came across a story about this woman and that's where she was from, or was it a conscious decision to explore that part of the world?
Well, the story is set in Ladakh because that's where Sonam is from, and the original girl. And Ladakh itself is a character in the story, because if you lived in a city and you had some sort of accessibility issues, if you were differently abled, there would be different resources that would come to you that you could have easy access to. Whereas if you were in a village with lots of streams, it would be different. If you were in by the ocean with sandy topography, then it would be different. And in Ladakh, it's full of mountains, steep slopes, and streams and rivers and rocks. So accessibility, even something like a wheelchair, is very hard. Even if you did have access to a wheelchair, it's sort of hard, to be able to move around.
Was more the choice to film there, though? Were there any incentives, or you just decided it needed to be in its place of origin, where the story was actually from?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And also for the story, after I wrote it, when I took it to people for investing, everybody said, "Oh, why don't you set it in Bombay? Why don't you set it somewhere else?" And I said, "No, this is where the authentic story happens, and this adds to the story as well." So we kept it in Ladakh because that's where it originated. That's where the inspiration for the story came from, and that's what felt authentic.
And how did you find your young actor for the actress, pardon me, for this movie? She was such a delight to watch on screen. And I'm sure you had to find someone who understood the sensibilities of both the character as well as the area and the nuances that you were trying to capture. What was your process in finding this young actress?
Right. So the story is actually also inspired by my sister's work in Ladakh. She lived there for over a decade, working with differently abled people, and working with village communities to see what accessibility will look like and what inclusivity will look like. And she started an organization called People's Action Group for Inclusion and Rights with Muhammad Iqbal, who actually can't move any part of his body below his neck. So the two of them started that organization. So she already had a lot of grassroots connections. And one of the people that she had worked with in schools was somebody who used to do theater with school children. So when we told him that, you know, we wanted to audition, he sent a message out to all the drama theaters, this school theater teachers, and there were lots of children who came. And of course, Jigma Devalamo, who plays Chuskit, you know, was by far the best. I mean, she was just instinctively knew what to do. So yes, so that's how we got all of the kids and all the actors actually.
Now, you explored the theme about the complexities between families, both intergenerationally and just family dynamics in general. Is that a theme that is something you commonly explore in your film, or is it something that you were inspired by just because of this Sonal's story?
So she didn't have such a harsh family dynamic like Chuskit had with her grandfather, but in general, I like to explore the milieu in which a story happens. I find more complex human interactions more interesting to explore and to sort of not solve, because that's what life is all about. And so when I was in Ladakh working on the story, researching and everything, I saw some things about grandparents, I've shot in Ladakh before for National Geographic. And then when I went back 12 years later, what I saw there was when I saw a lot of the younger people have moved on in the winters because it's very cold there, and there is ambient heating is what they use, which is, you know, through not electric heating, not sometimes they'll have stoves, but their walls are thick and all of that, but it still is rather cold. So the younger generation actually moves to Delhi, moves somewhere else where it's a little less cold. And so I saw that a lot of the older people thought that this modernity, this lack of tolerance for their own environment, is going to be something that's going to be problematic in the future. And though they're not very openly conflict-ridden people, they don't engage in conflict that much. They sort of solve it in a much more gentle and amicable way, amicable to me. I found that was a very interesting dynamic, that the worldview of the older generation was very different from the new generation's view, where ease of access to things, where ease of life and all of those things were important. And so that I kind of took inspiration from that and wrote in things to bring these layers of intergenerational sort of point of view or angst.
Now, you talk a little bit about having filmed in Ladakh before for National Geographic. I want to just go back to my previous question slightly, because there are some challenges when filming in a place that is less populated, and a place like Ladakh also is high in altitude, has thinning air. What were the challenges, and what were some of the benefits from filming in a city like this for those of our filmmakers who are watching and wondering about or possibly considering filming in a remote location? When I say benefits, I'm speaking to possibly jobs you brought to that town, et cetera. And challenges, I mean, actually technically, what were the challenges?
The physical challenges are sort of quite big. There's only 50% of oxygen in Ladakh than at sea level. So when we go there for 2 days, you really can't do anything because your lungs can't cope at all. Many people die when they go there and then start, functioning like we would at sea level. So we had to have 2 extra days built in where everybody came. We had to give them hot water, because the more hot water you drink, the more oxygen you get in your bloodstream. So they just have to lie down, and many people have severe headaches, and some can't breathe and all of that. So we had to have that sort of medical care available. And even after that, you're sort of winded out every time you carry equipment and all of that. So it's kind of difficult physically. But the first 2 days are downright dangerous. So we had to have everybody rest up for 2 days. And then after that, we sort of have to be careful. So we had to have a lot more people to carry things, which we would normally do ourselves. In terms of the cold, it's very cold. Sometimes minus 23, minus 24 with wind chill. So you get sort of frostbitten when you're outside. So every time I would call cut, I would run next to a fire, and I would actually want to put my whole foot in the fire because that would seem better than, you know, being burnt by the ice outside. So that was that. But in general, when I travel anywhere around the world, the smaller places where I shoot in, I was shot. Suddenly, this little town called Gusau in northern Nigeria came to my mind. It's a small town. I mean, it's not as small as anything in Ladakh, but it's a small town. But the driver, the people who are helping you, and everybody just sort of has a very different way of thinking about, you know, what help is, what professional work is. So I find that very, very beautiful.
Yes.
It can be quite difficult because their sense of professionalism is very different from your sense of professionalism. But if you look beyond that and just go to see what the human wants to give, so I find filming in smaller places quite rewarding in terms of human interaction and what you can get out of something for the film itself. So there are a lot of like, you know, we needed the cat. So one of the crew members just said, don't worry about it. I'm going to go and recruit the cat. I'll be the casting, you know, director for the cat. And he went all over every neighbor's house and say, can I play with your cat for a little while? And, you know, and in a city, if you went to someone's house, knocked on their door and said, can I play with your cat? They would really think you're loony, you know, at best, and have a fetish or something at worst, you know. So, but going there and sort of being able to do this sort of thing, it just endeared a lot of the people to us. And more people got involved. They would come and they'd say, oh, you know, if you want a donkey in your shot, I have a donkey. I'm going to walk it at, you know, to the field at 7 a.m. What time is your shot today? I can, you know, take it easy and walk it at 8 a.m. if you want. Those kinds of things that happen in little towns. So just embracing what it is as opposed to saying, oh my God, this doesn't work like my city. You know, embracing what it is what comes naturally to me. And I think that works really well.
And were the values that were portrayed in the film, I know the grandfather and daughter, or grandfather and Sonam's relationship wasn't a real one, but the value systems that we're talking about, the traditional value systems within the family, are those actually the traditional values that prevail in Ladakh?
Yes, absolutely, yes. And before I showed the film anywhere else, I took it back. I flew back to Ladakh and I invited the cast and crew and their families because I was very nervous. If, you know, it's sort of, you can't do any cultural appropriation. You want to be authentic to the storytelling. And I called some of the big people in Ladakh, you know, considered to be intellectuals there so that they can poke holes. And they all loved it, and they all said that it felt like one of their homes, and that's what I wanted the film to really be, is to be a fly in the home of someone's, you know, on the wall of someone's home. And they felt like this portrayed their family dynamic. So yes, so I was quite happy that we had done the work right.
Sonam is the young girl is so full of ambition, and she's so full of curiosity, and she has this horrible accident, but it doesn't quell her ambition or her curiosity, especially for education. Was that a choice that you made to make her pursuit be about, or to basically portray her ambition through education? Or is that something that is relative to the culture of Ladakh too, and you felt, I just want to know about your choices there, because we are very, very aware from the beginning of the film that she is a dreamer, and she wants to travel and she wants to do all these things. that all kind of gets honed into education later on. Wondering about your
Right.
choices around that.
Right. So as in a regular screenwriting process, you have to fix, if you have to personify whatever the struggles of the person is, and also pick one thing. If it's a love interest, it has to be the love interest. They can also want to be an engineer. They can also be whatever, but in film, you have to pick on one thing. And in general, in Sonam Spalsis's case, she wanted to go to school. And she didn't want to go to school just to have an education, but also the social interaction, the social level playing field that every other child is expected. You just send them to school. And why can't I go? For Chuskit, it's sort of, okay, my feet don't work, I can't walk, but that doesn't do, anything to the rest of me. So why can't I have access to what everybody else has? And so that, I thought, personified many people's struggles to be included.
Absolutely.
And as a child, that comes naturally, is that everybody's expected to go to school. And if you keep them from going to school, that's the very basic thing that you've sort of taken away from them.
Which one of these characters that you wrote was the hardest to tackle within this family? Which one did you blow off the pen? Which one was the hardest to get the nuances of? Because you have quite a few very complicated characters within this family, and they're all going through their own journey around Chuskit's injury and around their own personal growth.
I don't know if it was the hardest, but I always want to portray the women as not secondary characters, the females, and because Chuskit is the main character, that was easy because she's the driving force of the film. But I didn't want the mother to have a secondary role or a preconceived role of just being a caretaker or just being, things that you normally see. Oh, at one point, someone said, "Oh, in terms of the struggle," because at a certain point, when you do film writing structure, at a certain point, it has to dip down, and you have to hit a point that is really sad. And at one point, when the mom's walking up the stoop, the stairs to the house, and she falls, she slips, and Chuskit is left behind. Around that time, that we needed something to happen, for the audience to feel something. I'm talking in terms of technical script writing. And someone suggested to me, why can't it be something like the mother is now pregnant and they're, I'm like, no, we will not always reduce women to their ovaries. If something happens, if the mother, maybe because she's got a jam co-op business, something can happen to that. But I'm not always, it's always when there's jeopardy that has to be introduced for women, it's either they're going to be raped, they're going to be pregnant, something like that. I'm like, no, I will figure something out. And so those were the things that I think are easier for people to fall into. I'm very aware of not wanting to do that. So then it wasn't hard for me, but it's a very easy trap to fall into for people.
We've been socialized to see women characters in certain dimensions, and it's really up to the filmmakers of today to change those dimensions. And it's a trap and a conversation that we see prevalent in mainstream media right now, all the time. We saw a lot of backlash, for example, with Enola Holmes, the YA Sherlock Holmes piece that hit Netflix because they said she was man-hating. There was and it's the women's movement has become a very complex, and the woman character has become a very complex thing to tackle because you want to show the present day struggles, which are real to all women. Speaking of which, you're a woman who works in the Indian film industry. It's a male-dominated industry, much like the American film industry. We had a couple questions from our audience asking if there are challenges that you face or that you feel like you have to tackle specifically within your localized industry that are specific to women.
I can't extrapolate from my experience. I am fairly forceful So when I walk into a room, you're not going to assume you can do stuff to me or talk to me a certain way. And if you do, you'll find your place. So I haven't really had that kind of an experience. Not to say that doesn't happen. I know that it's happened a lot to a lot of people, but for me, I just go, I present, I do what I need to do, and if you're not on the same page, and well, good luck to you, and I walk out. But I have not had anybody sort of behave in any way that's inappropriate or unsolicited towards me. With my crew, I was very, very aware that I am at the top of the food chain, and I have a hierarchy in place for whatever it's worth. That, you know, I'm the director, then I have my directorial team, then there's the, you know, different teams, and there are bosses. Were all of the, almost all except the camera department, every department had women as heads, and had women working at all levels, except for the camera department. And so I had conversations with all of the women, and I had conversations with all of the men separately, saying, you know, pretty much that if anything happened that made you uncomfortable, the way the world works is they ask for the woman to prove that it happened. In this case, I'm going to just say, okay, if a woman's brought it to me, I'm going to believe her. It will be your onus to prove that you didn't do that. So you'll have to please watch your step. You know, and so not to say that I'm accusing that men will always be like that, but if something like that came up, then I would be quite. I know where my heart lies, and I won't be. What do you say? I won't falsely indict someone, but you're on notice.
Some more questions from our audience, from Kalpa. And it says, since this is based on a real story, I'm assuming that Chuskit was truly a difficult child. Would you think the story may have shifted had she been a docile child?
Yes, absolutely. So this is based on Sonam Spalzis' story, and Sonam Spalzis is a very feisty kid. She's now in Ladakh. She's moved back to Ladakh. She is actually pretty non-verbal, but even being non-verbal because of her condition, even being non-verbal, she was quite what was considered adamant. So it could be seen as a negative trait, or you could see someone who pushes for what she wants, right? Mm-hmm. And so she did get an education. She went to South India, and she joined a vocational training course there. And then she's gone back to Ladakh now. And so one is the actual difficulties of dealing with someone who's physically challenged, you know, the physical stuff that you need to do for them. And then the emotional challenges, and then the mind challenges, you know, if they're battling with you all the time. And why not? Why should any child just accept docilely whatever we present to them as the world they didn't ask to be born? And once they are, well, we are to sort of see what their true nature is, and to provide for them what they desire. Absolutely. And so it shouldn't be any different for someone who is physically challenged or emotionally or mentally challenged even. So yes, if she had been a docile child, it would have been much easier for everybody in the family. And that's what I see everywhere, especially in India. You know, it's okay, don't ask for too much, don't do this, don't do that, so that it's easier on everybody else. And this child just didn't get with the program.
Everybody, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, if you have other questions, go ahead and ask them. I don't know if I was supposed to announce that, but I'm going to continue asking Priya the ones that I have so far. Having a doctor, this is also from Kalpa, having a doctor from another faith, was that deliberate?
So in Ladakh, till very recently, yes, it was deliberate in the sense, not in the way that most people think as tokenism. But in the sense that in Ladakh, till about, I would say 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it was just normal for Muslims and Buddhists to get married and follow their own faiths in a family. It was there. There are quite a lot of Muslims, and Buddhists are the majority, but there are quite a lot of Muslims over there, and so it's just very easy the way the two faiths just intermingle, and so I wanted to represent that, But in this case, the doctor is from Kashmir. I mean, in my mind, you might not have thought he's from Kashmir, but in my mind, and that's very close, and a lot of people come from there. And I needed an outside doctor, not from a religion perspective, but because anybody who's steeped in that culture would probably understand that it's better to accept than to challenge. And so I needed someone from outside to come into the film that way. And so, yes, it was deliberate, and it was inspired by seeing how easy it was for people to not be pigeonholed into what religion you were born into.
I'm going to take a couple more questions for you from Vijaya. How different do you think the journey or story of Chuskit would have been had she been a boy instead of a girl?
In Ladakh, probably not very different. Except they may not have sent her to the nunnery, but or they might have still made him become a monk, maybe. But sorry, I'm moving. I think my feet are sleeping now because I'm sitting in a certain position. So not very different in Ladakh.
Okay.
Minor difference.
What is, as someone who is a award-winning international filmmaker, how do you see the state of the industry, the current changes that that is happening with our marketplace affect the work that you are looking to do, or the work you're trying to do, or maybe finding distribution for a movie like this? Has it affected you, and what is your outtake on the changes in the international marketplace right now?
I am not an expert, so I will not extrapolate, but I will talk about my experience. I can tell you that in India, it's hard to get a film like this because, sorry, you were saying something?
No, it could even be about the demand now for more foreign content. I'm just curious to the experience of the international.
Right. So that, like I said, I don't pass myself off as having any knowledge about anything really. So I can't talk about that, but I can tell you, you're free to kind of draw from what my experience has been, is that in India, it's harder for a film like this to get into even OTT platforms because one, it doesn't have a big name, which is what everybody wants. Two, I'm not a big name. Three, it's an independent film. Four, it's in a language that is not a mainstream language. So we are so restricted by the language of the film, the spoken language of the film, and not the language of the film itself, the language that the film uses to speak its truth, not the words, And so it's very hard. People don't want to see subtitled films and things like that. So that's one challenge. The other challenge when you go abroad, a lot of people saw it and they all liked it. A lot of the sales agents and all of that liked it. But then I got the sense from several of them saying, well, when we thought, okay, India, a girl child who is disabled, family conflict, we thought something would happen, something negative, like, some sexual something, or something would happen to her. She might get molested. There would be abject poverty. So the West's view of what India should be is something that this doesn't fall into. And that it ends in a beautiful community. This thing, it's like, oh, if this had been a story set in, I don't know, Minnesota, they'd take it. Because their view of Minnesota fits this. right? But their view of India and her girl child and all of that is not fitting this. And so they said, you know, it doesn't have the rawness. Well, it's very raw, but it doesn't have the rawness that the stereotype rawness that they have of India. So my thing is always is, I don't care. I'm going to challenge that. I'm not going to fall into that. Just like I was saying about the woman, if there is a jeopardy that's needed, and let's make her pregnant, let's get her raped, let's do, you know, something to her. I'm not going to do that because that's the easy cop out way of doing it. So I'm still trying. And the reason that this is tough is that I'm still trying to get it on OTT platforms, in theaters and things like that, which, whereas if you see a lot of the alternative content from India, and if you look specifically, if there's caste involved, if there is gender involved, if there's certain kind of violence involved, it will sell abroad. Whereas a story like this, which is very authentic, raw, and I'm told appealing, still finds it hard to be sold.
Well, Priya, thank you for spending time with us. I appreciate your notes on the international marketplace, but I think you have a multi-award winning film. I hope it finds its home and wider audience because it really speaks to universal subject matter. Can you tell our audience where they can find, or what you're working on next, or where they can find more information about the films that you make so they can stay in touch and follow both Chuskit's journey and your filmmaking journey?
Sure, they could email us on the Chuskit YouTube channel, Facebook, or what I'm working on now is I'm writing a script, and I'm finding it hard in lockdown because I have 2 children and they're at home doing online schooling. So it's kind of disastrous for 3 of us, all 4 of us, to be working on our computers and all of that. But I'm trying to finish my script on the story is about a mother who is discovering that her 15-year-old son is mentally has a mental challenge. I haven't figured out what. I think I know what the disorder is. I'm exploring ADHD, bipolar, schizophrenia, things like that. So I'm working on that script now, on the mother trying to discover or discovering it, and what that means in the Indian setting, in an Indian family.
Wow. What a challenge to take on. You really love to do these social commentary pieces that are so needed today. Thank you for your work. Thank you. Chuskit was absolutely beautiful. To our audience, I hope you guys continue to check in and screen films with us here at the Indian Film Festival of Cincinnati. I will be back with all of you on Sunday for the Hollywood panel. And until then, good night, and thank you to Priya. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.